Good morning. This is Jason Dean from Film Fanatic. Back at it again. Cranking out some videos, trying to make some more content. I got the time now. My schedule's a little bit more flexible, and it's been a lot of fun. Like I've said before on in previous videos, that I've been kind of chomping at the bit to get to do more of these videos because I have a different format now, so it's a little bit easier. And I've been checking out a lot of great films, and so I've been sitting on a whole stack of movies that I've been wanting to talk about and discuss and all those good things. And I've gotten a chance to see some things in the theater again, which has been really fun, and looking forward to trying to do that again as soon as possible. So yeah, uh, this is still a new thing for me as far as the video reviews, and they're kind of set up like reviews to a degree, but then also they're like just little brief discussions around the films and things and certain subjects that are closely uh, tied to them or very related to the subject at hand. So yeah, if you get a chance, check out the page, Jason Dean, on YouTube. And there's most of the stuff is all under the Film Fanatic label. I have some music things on there that I've been kind of doing, mostly with Quantum. I've been uploading a few different videos from the past year or so. I The most recent videos that we had uploaded for Quantum were from our album release show that we had in June. I had a great friend, John Luft, who came down, which was a nice surprise, who I play music with in a band called Electric Bonfire. And he's a super awesome dude. But he came to the show, and I was really excited that he showed up. And then he took a bunch of really cool photos and some really cool videos. And I didn't know he was doing it at the time, so that was a nice surprise. And then he sent me a whole like stack of photos and some cool videos. So it kind of spawned this idea that we're gonna uh, hopefully collaborate pretty soon, where he'll come to an upcoming Quantum show and record our set. He's got a great eye. I remember meeting him actually. The first time I met John was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. It was right before I started playing with Electric Bonfire. In Quantum, the band, we always usually do. We've done it for about, I don't know, maybe 5 years now. It's kind of crazy, but we've done it maybe about 5 years or so in a row. And we have this tradition of like always playing at the Rockland Summer Solstice in Rockland, Maine. And it's a super fun time because it's basically they block off the entire street in Rockland, Maine. They have food vendors, and then they have music throughout the entire street that go throughout the entire area of Main Street. And they have all kinds of stuff. They have blues, rock. They've had some world music stuff, and then we usually do our set of electronic music, and we usually do it either at the far end on one side or the far end on the other side. And the first time I met John, my friend Mike, who plays bass in Quantum, he had been already playing with John and Mitch Markowitz of Electric Bonfire. So they were already playing a lot, and I guess Mike had invited John down to the gig, and he came down, and he had taken some photos of us that were really cool, and I was just like, wow, like this is really cool. He took some really cool black and white photos, and then I don't know. Shortly after that, we kind of got more connected, and then we started playing together. And ever since then, I've been part of that band, and it's been a total blast. Great music, great songwriting, and just a really great group of dudes to play music with. So I've been really fortunate with that. So when John came down to our CD release show, I was really excited that he came down. But then when he surprised me with all these cool photos and some cool videos, um, the thing that I found that was so cool about what he did was that he kind of captured in my head of the mindset that I'm kind of in as far as like the kind of the aesthetic around the band. Again, totally related to this film channel and the film fanatic thing. Very much influenced by the aesthetics of film. So I always have that kind of in mind because we try to do like a visual thing along with our music, and I felt like he totally captured that kind of vibe, and without having to like describe it to him or anything. And plus, we weren't aware of the stuff that was being taken, and he just totally captured that vibe. So it kind of created this idea in my head about having him come to a future show, a future Quantum show, and basically like record our set, and to do like an extended video of us live. So we're kind of in the process of doing that and getting a date. We have some shows coming up, so he's going to come hopefully to at least one and do some video, which would be super exciting. So that will be when we kind of secure a date of when that will happen. I will definitely do some extra promotion about that. Working with John Luft for a future Quantum show. So stay tuned for that. That will be really fun and exciting. And then also next week we will be next Thursday. Quantum will be back at Lulu's, and Lulu's has been fun. That's been great. I've talked a lot about our history with Ashley Seelig, the owner, and also with Fog, and we brought back a different form of the residency this year at Lulu's, which is the ice cream place that's like kind of connected to Fog. The Fog bar itself has not been opened, and it's still up in the air when that might happen, or if it can happen. But in the time being, we've been doing these outdoor shows outside in the courtyard of Lulu's, and it's great. I really love that space because there's all like brick behind us. It's like all brick walls, so the sound and the acoustics I feel are really good, and it's kind of mellow. It's kind of fun, and basically we just set up, play for about 3 hours, and we just kind of do our thing. And Lulu's is cool. They have a liquor license, so they sell adult milkshakes, and they have all homemade gelato and ice cream. They sell beer, so it's a really cool spot, and it's been a really fun gig, and I feel real fortunate that we were able to set that up this year. And they've all been outside, and we've lucked out with the weather. I think we've only had to cancel one, so it's been pretty cool. But we have our next one's coming up next week at on Thursday, and we're going to change the time a little bit. We usually start at 2 to 5, but we're going to do it from now on from 3 to 6, because there seems to always be like a rash of people that come in the first hour when they open around like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and then they get pretty busy, and then there's like a little lull, and then towards the end they start getting really busy again. So we had the idea, mostly Ashley had the idea of having us start a little bit later to kind of hit that part of the audience. So that will be fun, and we'll be doing that same kind of time slot also with the jazz group that we have, the Whitehead Dean group. We have some more shows coming up there also that will go into September, and we'll be doing those shows also later on, and they will be on Sundays, and they'll be 3 to 6. Although we do have a few dates that will be on different days. The one coming up is for Quantum is on a Thursday. We usually play there on Sunday, and I believe we have a jazz show coming up on a Saturday. So yeah, lots of fun. So yeah, got a little bit of a pretty funny story to tell first before I get into this movie. But just as a quick introduction, I just recently went to the place I always talk about, Blue Moose Music. I went there last week, and I picked up a whole bunch of new Blu-rays, and I've been doing a bunch of reviews on them for like on both the Film Fanatic pages on Facebook and on Instagram, and then I've also been doing a handful of video reviews like this one for about those same movies. And one of the movies I got was this movie here, The Wraith, starring Charlie Sheen. And I believe this might be, I could be wrong, but I think it might be Charlie Sheen's one of his first movies, if not his first movie. It's from 1986, and I think it came out before. Yeah, I believe it came out before Wall Street, the great Oliver Stone movie with Michael Douglas. And The Wraith was a movie, that I remember seeing as a kid a bunch of times, and it was something I, was kind of obsessed with. It was like probably the first movie I saw as a kid that involved like car chase scenes and lots of action, and it had a pretty heavy duty like sci-fi vibe to it, and it had a little bit of a horror element to it. So it was a really cool fusion of science fiction and action, great car chase scenes, and it had all this great music from the 80s. And it's, on one hand, it's one of those things, it's like, it kind of went into obscurity after it was riding its, it was a real popular movie for a while when it was during the days of VHS, and then it was on cable for a short period of time, and then the movie kind of went into this like weird obscurity. But they just re-released it on Blu-ray, and it's such a funny, hilarious cult classic from the 80s. It's super cheesy, but I remember when I saw it in the at Bull Moose on Blu-ray, I was just like, oh my god, I couldn't believe it. So I snatched it up, and I've seen it a couple times since then. And yeah, what a fantastic movie! And it just totally, out of nostalgic reasons, it just totally reminded me of like being a kid, in the '80s, and watching these like super cheesy, culty movies, and watching it now as an adult, it's just as great. In some ways, it's almost better. Fantastic movie. But anyway, the story, before I get into the film, the story I had was about centered around the actor Charlie Sheen. So he was kind of known, Charlie Sheen's actually, he's been around for years and years. And then his brother, Emilio Estevez, another pretty famous actor. And then Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez's father, Martin Sheen, who's also actually in Wall Street. That, an iconic actor, one of the greatest actors. Martin Sheen, probably my two favorite films of his is Apocalypse Now. I mean, just an amazing movie. What can you say about that hasn't been said? And also another movie by Terrence Malick called Badlands, which is a little bit more of a movie that is not as well known as, say, as Apocalypse Now. But Martin Sheen was in that, Badlands. And I believe it was directed by Terrence Malick. And Sissy Spacek's also in that movie. And that's an incredible movie. That would be a really cool movie to eventually buy on Blu-ray. I don't own it now, and to do a show on it, because it's definitely not as well known as, say, his role in Apocalypse Now. So basically the whole family has a real, a real established presence in the film industry and all kinds of films, and they still do. They're still, really, really active. But Charlie Sheen was mostly, because he Martin, like his father, but he, battled addiction. It's been a thing in their family for a long time. And Martin Sheen with alcoholism, and then Charlie Sheen with alcoholism and various drugs and cocaine and all kinds of insane debauchery. And he was mostly he was known for his excessive life once he became a real big superstar. And I remember seeing things where Charlie Sheen was referred to as Charlie the Machine Sheen because of his drug addiction, where he could just go on these drug fueled tirades for forever, cocaine fueled things where he would just go for 48 hours, whether he was on a film set or having a party, just kind of a crazy madman. So the funny story I wanted to share was I used to play in a band years ago with a couple of good friends, and I used to play in a band called the 220s, and they're the guitar player in that band, Joel Watson, who was a good friend of mine, is and still is a good friend. He had told me this wild and crazy story that his brother at one point had been working. He was also a musician. Joel's brother was also a musician, but he also like worked different kinds of jobs, like where he worked as a carpenter, and he was a fisherman for a long time. And he lived here in Northport and Belfast for a long time. But then I think it was probably 10 years ago or so, his brother moved to Alaska to do like a fishing gig, and he got a fishing job out there. And so he was there for, I think he might still be there, but basically he went there and had this job set up, moved there with his family, and they had a really great, kind of thing that they moved into. They had a house and this whole thing. And he told me this story, and I always found it to be one of the most amazing stories. So anyway, his brother went out to a bar one day or one night, or actually in the afternoon. He went to this local bar in Alaska, which was like in the city, and he went there for like basically like a lunch break. And he went there and he got some food, and he got like a beer or two. And it was like early in the afternoon, and the bar was really not very busy. It was kind of quiet, and he was kind of in there just quietly eating his lunch by himself. And there was like a handful of people at the bar or whatnot, milling around drinking. And he looked up and he looked at one of the guys who was at the bar, and he was like, and it was Charlie Sheen. And Charlie Sheen was just kind of hanging out. He was hanging out at the bar, having a couple of beers, and it was early in the day. It was like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And he basically was just kind of hanging out. So he ended up kind of making eye contact with Charlie Sheen, and then they started talking. They just started, talking, and he said that like Charlie Sheen came over to the table and was basically hanging out with him and talking, and they were just kind of shooting the shit back and forth, and then and he said he was like a super cool guy, totally down to earth, and he was like, and at I guess the end of the conversation, at the end of like when they were going to take off, when they were both going to leave the bar, Charlie Sheen had asked him, so he's like, so what are your plans for tonight? Do you have any plans to to go anywhere? Do you anything fun going on, basically? And he said, no, I'm just going into back to work, and probably going home and fix dinner and stuff, and hang out at my house. And then at that point, Charlie Sheen said to him, well, you should come back here tonight. Come back here around 9 o'clock, and we'll party it up. We'll get together and hang out. So he told him, yeah, sure, that would be super cool and amazing. Let's do it. So then he went to his brother went to work, and did his thing, and then 9 o'clock he came back to the bar, He went back to the bar. He was like, "Why not? This is a rare opportunity to hang out with a big rock star celebrity." So he went he went back to the bar at 9 o'clock, and lo and behold, Charlie Sheen was there. He was hanging out, and he was there with like a whole bunch of like a whole entourage of people. Like the bar was like pretty packed, and as the time progressed, the uh, the bar was like totally full, and all kinds of people were there. And he saw Charlie Sheen. He started talking with him, and then at that point, Charlie Sheen started buying everybody in the bar drinks and shots. And so Charlie Sheen proceeded to just buy drinks and shots for literally everybody in the bar, and there was like probably 50 to 80 people there. And this went on for a long time, and he just continually bought everybody drinks. Um, and people were partying like crazy and just going nuts, and eventually people started to kind of leave, and they were getting too drunk or blah blah blah. So they they things were winding down, and then friends Joel's brother was kind of one of the last people to be with Charlie Sheen, and like these few people that were there. So he's like, "Hey, you want to?" So Charlie Sheen turned to him after this whole like after these hours and hours of drinking. He's like, "Hey, you want to go back to my hotel room? We're gonna party some more over there." So then he went. So he took him up on it, and he went back to Charlie Sheen's apartment, and they did, uh, you know, all kinds of drugs into the wee hours, cocaine, and they even had prostitutes come over, and this went to they partied until dawn, and he said that it was just the most insane experience that he ever had. And they literally partied 24 hours. They had prostitutes over, cocaine, you name it, and they were just partying and partying and partying. And he said it was like one of the most insane experiences that he ever had. And I just thought that's like the epitome of, or the essence of like how I picture Charlie Sheen to be, especially when he was kind of a crazy man back then. And this was probably like 10 or 12 years ago. So yeah, pretty wild stuff. So anyway, this movie, The Wraith, this, like I said, this movie was directed by Mike Marvin. It came out in 1986. This was a movie that I was raised on. I was, I'd seen this multiple times as a kid. And then, like many things, years and years go by, and I kind of forgot about it. And then when I saw it at Bull Moose, I was just like, oh my God, I was blown away by it. So I immediately snatched it up. And like I said, it stars Charlie Sheen, Nick Cassavetes, Randy Quaid, and Sheryl Lynn Finn. And Nick Cassavetes, I believe this was his first movie as an actor, but Nick Cassavetes went on to become a pretty famous director after this film. I don't think he really acted after that, but he also he became a film director, and he directed quite a few movies. So you get a chance to look him up. He's got a pretty impressive resume and just and filmography of all of these films. And Sherilyn Finn, who's also in this film, this was her first movie. And Sherilyn Finn, for me, or at least she's probably most well known as her role in David Lynch's Twin Peaks. She was one of the main characters in that amazing show, the first season. Just an amazing actress, gorgeous and beautiful and everything. She also was in another David Lynch movie, which is a fantastic movie called Wild at Heart. She's in it only a short period, but just a great, amazing, stunning role. She was gorgeous and really great actress. And originally, too, and this movie was directed by Mike Marvin, written and directed. Originally, the role of Charlie Sheen was going to be played by Johnny Depp, but for whatever reason, that didn't happen. And the reason that had come about was Sherilyn Finn, the actress who I just talked about, was dating Johnny Depp. And I guess Johnny Depp was on set the whole time. And he was still, I think, involved with the TV show that kind of put him on the map, 21 Jump Street. But then something happened with the casting, and he didn't end up doing it. So then Charlie Sheen came on board. And Randy Quaid. I mean, one of the, just an iconic actor. So, just so great, so versatile. I think super underrated, really funny comedian. But then he can play some really great heavy roles. And this soundtrack too, the music. I mean, I feel like The Wraith, it's like the epitome of the '80s. Like to me, it's like says the '80s. If you put this on and watch it, it's like everything '80s is coming at you, full throttle. I mean, the soundtrack, it's got all this, music by Robert Palmer, Billy Idol, Ozzy Osbourne, Motley Crue, total '80s. It's from 1986, and there's a really great. The special features on here are pretty fantastic. They really go into all this great detail about when the film came out and the whole like that whole era, that time of when, you know, um, you know, all this, all the great '80s cheese ball movies were coming out, and how this movie kind of went into obscurity, but then came back, and it's kind of looked at now as like a cult, like a real cult B movie kind of sensation, and it totally is. Like it's just great, and everything about it is super fun, and I love watching it again too. I forgot about how great the kind of the science fiction element is. It's kind of like the Wraith is kind of centered around like a revenge tale of somebody who gets murdered, but essentially comes back and goes after the people that killed him, and he takes them out one by one, and so that's like the heart of the story, and yeah, it's just fantastic. And the transfer of this on on Blu-ray is just awesome. The the soundtrack, like I said, the music is just amazing. And when I think too, and they also go into it in pretty heavy detail in the special features where they talk to the guys who were the stunt coordinators and even the director. They talk a lot about you know like this movie predated films like say Fast and the Furious, where they're where there's like these completely over the top car chase scenes, and so and now of course they use mostly like CGI or blue screen for a lot of these things, and a lot of the stuff is so heavily digital. But back 1986, they didn't have really any of that technology, so everything you see is like in camera, and they're actually using stuntmen, and all of the locations are real, and all of the chase scenes are pretty much real, and they actually had somebody died during the shooting of the film, which brought the movie a lot of controversy. It was one of the chase scenes, and one of the stunt people died because they were what they were doing and trying to pull off was really ambitious, and it was quite dangerous, and it was not really what anybody else was doing at the time. So the director kind of got kind of held responsible, even though it really necessarily wasn't his fault. But he was kind of blacklisted, and he couldn't work for quite a few years after he made The Wraith, and then eventually got back into filmmaking. But he had a lot of negativity attached to his name as a director, in that he might have been kind of a reckless guy for this unfortunate death that happened on set. But he went on after about 3 or 4 years after the film had come out, and he kind of resumed his filmmaking career. But fabulous film, The Wraith, just the epitome of the '80s. Super cheesy. It's a totally great kind of cult B. I almost put it in the to a degree like the grindhouse exploitation kind of thing. It's because it's one of those it's in that same kind of category of things how I talk about, where it's so bad it's good. I mean, it's really bad, but it's just amazing too. Super fun movie. So I highly recommend it. 1986, The Wraith. So thanks again. This is Jason Dean on from Film Fanatic. If you get a chance, like and subscribe to the page, and we will see you next time. Peace.